Yo, so what's up, guys? Today we're breaking down the complete evolution of Cassie Howard from season 1 to season 3. And honestly, the more you rewatch Euphoria, the more you realize Cassie might secretly be one of the most smartest character writing in the entire show. Because on the surface, Cassie's storyline might look very simple, a girl chasing love, making bad decisions, getting caught in toxic relationships. That's how most people see it. But when you actually slow down and pay attention to how the show frames her across all three seasons, you start noticing something way more interesting happening underneath. Cassie isn't just changing emotionally, she's constantly reconstructing herself depending on who's looking at her. And once you notice that pattern, her entire storyline starts feeling completely different. Back in season 1, Cassie is introduced almost like the idealized version of femininity inside Euphoria's world. Soft spoken, affectionate, beautiful, easy to sympathize with. This show intentionally presents her in this very delicate cinematic way. But even early, there are small hints that Cassie's identity is heavily dependent on external attention. That's the important detail. She doesn't enjoy being admired. She slowly begins relying on it to define herself. And the series builds this way, especially through her relationships. Every time Casey connects with someone romantically, you can see her personality slightly shift around them. Not in obvious way, but enough to make you feel like she's always adjusting herself to fit what the other people respond to most. And once you recognize the trait, a lot of her later decisions start making much more sense. Even the situation with her leaked photos in season 1 becomes more layered on rewatch. Because yes, the experience clearly affects her negatively. But at the same time, the attention surrounding it is also reinforces something psychologically dangerous. The idea that being desired equals being valued. And Euphoria never says this directly. It lets you slowly observe it through her behavior. That's what makes the writing interesting. Then we get into her relationship with McKay, and honestly, this part of the story is underrated because McKay represents stability on paper. He's probably the closest thing Cassie has to a normal relationship during the early season. But the problem is their connection constantly feels slightly incomplete, like they are emotionally out of sync. Cassie wants reassurance in a very deep, consistent way, while McKay is dealing with his own presence, insecurity, and confusion about who he's supposed to become. So, even when they care about each other, there is a distance between them that never fully disappears. And I think that's important because it sets up why Nate becomes such a turning point later. Now, season 2 is where the audience relationship with Cassie completely changes because this is a season where admiration slowly turns into discomfort. And obviously, we need to talk about the Nate Jacobs. The Nate and Cassie storyline works because the show understands something very specific about the attraction. Sometimes people don't fall for a first person, they fall for the feeling that person gives them. And that's exactly what happens here. Before Nate and Casey is even become involved in the series already established Nate as someone who naturally commands attention everywhere he goes. There's intensity around him, confidence, control, and mystery. And for someone like Cassie, who constantly searches for reassurance through attention and emotional validation, that kind of focus becomes incredibly powerful. What makes their relationship interesting isn't just the betrayal of Maddie Perez. It's how quickly Cassie begins reshaping her entire world around the feeling Nate gives her. And the show actually takes time building that transition. It's in the late night drives, the secrecy, the private conversations, the moments where Nate suddenly looks at her differently than everyone else. To the audience, these scenes feel tense. But to Casey, they feel cinematic, like she's finally stepping into the kind of love she's imagined in her head for years. That's why the relationship escalates so fast emotionally. Not because Nate suddenly becomes perfect for her, but because he makes her feel intensely seen. And honestly, I think that's the detail a lot of viewers missed the first time watching. Cassie isn't changing Nate purely because of romance. She's chasing the certainty she feels when his attention is completely focused on her. For a brief moment, it gives her this illusion of emotional security. Like, if she can hold on to that attention long enough, maybe everything inside her finally feels settled. But the genius of season 2 is that the show slowly reveals how unsustainable the mindset actually is. You can literally watch Cassie becoming more consumed, trying to preserve this ideal version of herself. The early morning routines, the observation preparation, the constant anxiety underneath, even in her happiest moments. And one of the smartest directing choices in Euphoria is that these scenes are filmed almost beautifully. Everything looks polished, but underneath that beauty, there is constant tension because Cassie starts treating love like something she has to constantly earn. And that's why her storyline becomes uncomfortable to watch. Not because viewers stop understanding her, but because they start realizing how far she is willing to go to avoid feeling replaceable. Then becomes the school play sequence, which honestly might be one of the most important moments in her entire character arc. Because that's the first time the image she's been carefully maintaining completely breaks apart in public. And the audience reaction inside the show mirrors real life perfectly. Some people laugh, some people judge her, some people feel second-handed embarrassment. But if you look closely, the scene is really about somebody losing control over the version of themselves they spent years together to perfect. And after the point, Cassie never really feels the same again, which brings us into season 3. Now, what's interesting about season 3? Cassie is that character feels quieter, more controlled on the surface, but also far more aware of herself. There is the lingering exhaustion around her now. Like someone who spent years chasing external validation and is finally becoming to understand that attention and emotional fulfillment are not the same. And honestly, that's what makes this version of Cassie so fascinating. Because she's no longer just reacting emotionally, she's beginning to recognize the patterns in herself. The constant need to be chosen, the fear of becoming forgettable, the pressure to remain desirable at all times. And the show presents this in a much more mature way than before. Season 3 doesn't portray Cassie as a simply falling apart. It portrays somebody realizing that the identity they build around other people's approval may not actually contain a stable sense of self underneath. That's much darker idea psychologically. And it's probably why her storyline feels so uncomfortable for a lot more viewers. Because Cassie represents something very modern, the confusion between attention and connection, visibility and self-worth, being wanted and being understood. And across all 3 seasons, Euphoria slowly asks the same question through her character. What happens when somebody spends so much time becoming desirable for others that they no longer know who they are without attention? That's the real tragedy of Cassie Howard. Not the relationships, not the scandals, not even the betrayals. It's the fact that every season brings her closer to realizing the external validation can never permanently resolve internal uncertainty. And honestly, that's why her writing feels so believable. But next video, we need to talk about Mary Perez. Because unlike Cassie, Mary understands power completely differently. Cassie searches for reassurance through love. Mary searches for control through confidence. And once you really analyze Mary's psychology, you realize she might actually be the most emotionally guarded character in the entire show. So that's it, guys. We have broken down Cassie Howard from all 3 seasons of Euphoria. Stay tuned for Mary Perez. See you in the next video. Until then, bye guys from Zolar.